number of perfectly sane and reliable people have been involved in this flying saucer business.
For whatever reason, the big science journals don't want to publish their findings.
Dr. Reed is a famous investigator of psychic phenomena, but disbelieves that such a show might interfere with my investigation.
The term flying saucer has become a household
There's a
word.
multitude of theories and explanations for the mysterious lights and unexplained phenomenon witnessed by millions of people around the world every year.
Since 1948, one publication has continued to bring news about paranormal phenomena and unexplained events. That magazine is Fate. And in that tradition of providing true reports of the strange and unknown, this is Fate Magazine Radio. And now, coming to you live from WGOG Digital Broadcasting, your host of Fate Magazine Radio, Todd Bates.
And a good evening, one and all. Fate Magazine Radio Live, WGOG Digital Broadcasting, and of course, FateMag.com. My goodness, we've got an amazing show here planned for you on this beautiful Sunday, November the 26th already, 2017 here, folks. Wow. This year is flying by. Now, tonight we're going to be joined by, of course, Phyllis Galde here in the first segment. And after that, we have got Scott Henderson and Marcus Allen, the publisher of Nexus magazine over in the UK. They're going to be discussing the lunar landing. It's the Great Moon Debate. We're going to be tossing some things back and forth here tonight. We definitely want your opinion. And to do that, you need to log into the chat room, WGOG Digital Broadcasting at WGOGDB.com. Log in through Facebook, Twitter as a guest. Just get your derrieres in there, folks. That's what's important. Post your questions, comments right in there. And, of course, we'll get those to all of our guests this evening. And first, I definitely want to welcome the one, the only, the editor-in-chief of Fate Magazine herself, Miss Phyllis Galde. Phyllis, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Wow, a lot of things. You know, you had a big move from Minnesota. You're over there in beautiful North Carolina now, and we spoke a little bit there during the first episode, and wanted to kind of retouch to the listeners here some updates. What's been going on? The move? Are you getting settled? Okay.
Pretty much so. I feel like I have a brain now. I still cannot get compass directions, so I can't figure out north, south, east, and west. Even when I look at it, it doesn't grok because it's not like the Midwest. Everything's laid out in flat squares, and I just all this mountain, hilly country. I absolutely can't get it in my body yet.
Yeah, but it's so gorgeous out there. You don't have to worry about what direction you're going. Just the scenery you're looking at.
Exactly. It's absolutely beautiful. I love it. It's just spellbinding. I just want to look at the scenery, the mountains all the time when I go outside. I don't care about driving.
So things in the Fate office, they're kind of settling down. You're getting settled in there. There's been a lot of messages from people wondering about issues and when these are coming out, when the next issue's coming out, what happened to this. You want to go ahead and update them, Phyllis?
Sure. Well, of course, the move was tremendous. Just me, 2 dogs, and a cat in my car, and then, of course, a truck brought all the Fate stuff down there. But we are in the process of unloading and organizing all the Fate material. I am working on issue 732, which features Josephine Baker on the cover. And by next year, we should be running pretty smoothly and issue every other month, as we had always planned. But it's like so exciting because there's so much stuff to report on here. There was a dearth of excitement in cold Minnesota, but down here in the Carolinas, and Virginia, and Georgia, there's just all kinds of cool things. There's Bigfoot sightings all around the country. They have Lizard Man in Bishopville. I mean, 3 hours away from me. How cool is that?
Yeah, I mean, you are right in the thick of things. You've got the Brown Mountain Lights out there too. Let's see, Joshua Warren. He investigates out there. He does a lot of things out there.
Yes, I just got an email from him, in fact. And there's Bigfoot sightings here in North Carolina. There's a town of Bat Cave, which is right next door to me, kind of a retro hippie tourist area where all these cool, largest cave and all these bats and the Bigfoot. Anyway, it's just Oh, and then the Grady Norman, there's an old story I came across when I was cleaning out files up in Elkin, North Carolina, in the north part of the country. He had this good preacher man, good family man. They got some linoleum from somebody, and it was moldy. Then they put it down, and the mold grew like horrible, some kind of disease all over their house. It drove them out of the house no matter what they did to clean it. And they wound up living in a little bus on their property, and the house was basically condemned. The people were freaked out, and they think that Stephen King did a story based on that, The Mold from Hell. It was just so bizarre. It was just on national, coverage because it was so bad. It was so weird, like it was some curse from hell.
This stuff grew out of control in their house. I mean, there was no way for them to clean it. It just kind of
exploded. They did everything. They did everything they could, and it just like grew overnight and just ate all their furniture and all their all their stuff. Yeah, it was just way, way bizarre.
It's like a demon
mold. Mold from hell. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was possessed.
The mold from hell. That'd be awful, though, because that stuff gets wicked. The black mold, that can make you really sick. I mean, that's it's not a good thing. I know some molds they make penicillin out of, but that's not one of them. Yeah,
it ruined their whole lives.
And out there in North Carolina, like you said, you've got Sasquatch roaming free and undisturbed out there, too. Because there's not too many people out there. Now, I've done a little bit of research on Sasquatch. Down here in Florida, they call it the skunk ape. It's a little smaller. But up there in the Carolinas and in Oregon, they are huge, supposedly. They are just massive. They're giant. And they don't go out there and literally hunt them. They
eat dogs, too, supposedly. There was a guy, I can't remember who wrote the book. I think this was in Virginia. And they get really angry if you are in their area and they throw rocks and hit sticks against trees, and they'll pick up a deer. They eat deer and dogs.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to eat.
There's probably different kinds of Bigfoot, nice ones and more elementary ones.
There was one, and on the subject of Bigfoot real quick, you're going to get a kick out of this story. I had a caller years ago call in, and what they said was they just saw Bigfoot 3 days ago outside of their window. Now, that she was in there washing dishes and saw Bigfoot outside of her window. She went outside. She said it jumped in the fourth dimension, okay, and took off. And then she said later she was driving down the road and saw another Bigfoot. She had a little red convertible, she said, and she stopped and looked right at him, and she said this Bigfoot looked just like Tom Selleck.
A handsome Bigfoot.
Looked just like Tom Selleck, and she was going to, get out and meet and greet, I guess, with this creature, and, of course, it takes off. They're real elusive. It's not like they're going to come up and shake your hand. Hi, I've been hiding for centuries. Nice to meet you. But she had these sightings, and how close that, I mean, this is something that could happen to you while you're there, because you've got animals around you the way it is. You've got coyotes, you've got bears, Bigfoot is around there. Just imagine that you're sitting there, doing your dishes one day or looking out the window, and you see one of these giant Sasquatch creatures right outside your back door. What are you going to do?
I would say hello and greet it in friendship.
Okay, good.
I already had one time on the show. I'll tell you about my personal Bigfoot experience. It was pretty bizarre. It was a different dimension, but sometimes I can see things in other frequencies. But yeah, I would totally treat them as a friend.
I would do the same. A lot of other people would try and kill them so they can drag them in for some kind of reward or some. Yeah, like
Planet of the Apes. But no, I think they can slip into another frequency, so that's why there's no confirmation of sightings. In fact, when I was looking for a house down here, I asked my realtor, who was into metaphysical stuff, you ever have Bigfoot sightings? Oh, no, they're not in North Carolina. I got back home to Minnesota, and she texted me and says, hey, there was a Bigfoot sighting right where we were in that same county that same day we were there. So maybe I just tuned into it. I knew it was around.
And I'm with you.
Pretty cool.
It is. And I believe they can jump back and forth. I don't think they live here. I think they come here. and they just hop back and forth. They do their thing. They're amazing. Very, very, just like the Yeti. Very, very elusive creatures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kiwani Lapsaratus, you'll have to have him discussing Bigfoot, but he has a lot of personal experiences with them. And he thinks, well, I don't know if it's Kiwani says that, but some researchers believe that they're brought by UFOs. When you have a UFO sighting, sometimes they'll bring them down to Earth, but they're not native to this planet.
Yeah, they're definitely not indigenous. I don't think that they're the missing link. I don't think that they're a part of the gorilla family or anything. I think it's an interstellar kind of being, just like it's unearthly.
Yep.
You know, just because none of them have been found. Now, they said the same thing about the giant squid years ago, and look what happened. We discovered the giant squid. But it wasn't anything.
And Fate had it on the cover long before it was made the national news. That was one of our covers, a giant squid.
And see, that's right there. In their face, true reports of the strange and unknown before they're even discovered. It's right there. But people don't pay attention, Phyllis. It's almost like...
some do. I mean, the subscribers there have a little edge on the rest of the world.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, they definitely have the edge over everybody else, but your average Joe, they're in denial of a lot of these things even occurring. And that's quick to change. That's definitely going to be changing here pretty soon, because these things you can't deny. There's too many documented sightings, and of course, Fate reports all of them. There's so many people that have been abducted and came back, and their stories never change. There's just so much, evidence is a strong word, but it is evidence. There's so much evidence there to back it up. You can't beat it. It's one of those things where you either believe it or you don't. There's really not a gray area.
Right, and once you have a personal experience, then your life has changed. You don't deny it. You actually see a spirit or see a strange animal. Then it changes your perception, opens you up to a whole nother vista.
So we've got a few minutes left here, and of course we're going to give them a quick update at the end of this, but. Do you have like a creepy story you want to share with people? Everybody loves a creepy story.
Well, I can't find it, and actually gave me the real willies, and I have yet to discover which issue it was in, but it was a 2-part issue. And this gentleman wrote about this experience that these guys had up, I think it was Alaska. They were on snowmobiles, so it was fairly recent. Anyway, bad weather, bad environment. They wrecked or something happened, accident with the snowmobile, and one guy died. And the other one, they tried to find him, but they couldn't. He was not on the snowmobile when the natives went out to look for him. Well, he was seen later. This gives me the goosebumps just talking about it. He was seen running around in the frozen north naked. Like climbing up in a tree. He had changed, become like a skinwalker or something. He had transformed into some kind of human beast creature.
Whoa. Because he'd been out there so long, or do you think he was just... Well,
no, something happened. He did some kind of shape-shifting.
And out there...
Or some...
Yeah, out there. Yeah. Who's going to know? Who's going to know? I mean, it's the barren. It's almost like barren waste out there, but it's gorgeous. So he was probably out there just trying to get back home, and then all of a sudden, something gets a hold of him.
Somehow he changed. He did some, like the skinwalkers, like the Native Americans talk about the skinwalkers out on the West Coast. This guy, they saw him scrambling up in the tree and down, but he had no clothes on. But he wasn't frozen, even though it was 20, 30 below. He was surviving in this other creature possession, whatever. That's like, how could that happen?
That is eerie.
They have a lot of cool stories up in Alaska and the far north in the Arctic about strange creatures that eat meat, and of course you have to eat meat in that, but they eat raw meat, and there's just like things that aren't human up there.
Wow. And that would, if I was one of those elusive creatures or, something of that nature, that's the place I would go, because there's not that many people around. It's very cold.
No,
up
there's
there.
nobody going
It's
to bother
freezing.
you. Yeah, you can.
You just get the winter coat. And what I want to do real quick, Phyllis, I want to give a shout out to one of our listeners. He's listening all the way from Germany. Boris is listening.
Wow.
Boris is listening tonight. Goodness. Well, Boris, meet Phyllis. Without Phyllis, we wouldn't have either one of these things. So welcome to the show. It's great to have you. All the way from Germany. Fantastic. Then there's...
Hi, Boris.
There's these... What we want to do is get them up to speed here, Phyllis. Now, the store is up. Things have moved a little bit, but you guys should have noticed a difference. The new website is up, and you can get the subscriptions there, of course, up there now. You've got the year, you've got the 6 month. We're going to be getting a free issue, the sample issue up there. We're going to get that to you, the free issue. That way, you guys can try it out, see if you like Fate Magazine. That's going to be coming up here soon. And it's, to me, I think it's a lot easier, Phyllis. I mean, it's easier for them to order. It's definitely more interactive. There's articles up there too, really cool stuff. So you definitely want to take advantage of it. Get over there to fatemag.com. It's real simple. And just click on subscribe. And that'll take you there. You'll see everything in there. And what this is, you got to tell her about these 50 packs. That about blew me away. What's this 50 pack?
Well, when we were cleaning out the warehouse, we decided that I had a lot of inventory, and of course it's very expensive to move heavy books. So we came upon the idea of choosing excess inventory and putting 50 of them in a box. They're all brand new Fates that have never been circulated, and it was like a $300 value. You get it for $30 plus $13 shipping.
Wow.
So they're from 1995 to 13. They're uncirculated vintage issues over the last 18 years. It's kind of a potpourri of brand new large size Fates and the small digest size, but they're all brand new, and they're just fascinating reading. People have so much fun with them because it's like Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, these stories are still fresh and new, too. I mean, they really are, because a lot of these are still ongoing
50-year-old
cases.
stories are as good as the stories today.
And I believe those range from, 1995 to 2013, something like that, Phyllis?
Approximately, yep.
Yeah.
Yep, give
They're
or take.
all mixed in there. My goodness, yeah. It's definitely like Christmas, because that's what I like about it. And of course, I've read, and I know you and I have had discussions about reading, but I have read Fate Magazine for years, and it's a very informative. It's not one of those things that, you look at it and just toss it aside. It's one of those things that kind of covers all bases, is what I like. It's not geared toward one thing. It has several different things in there, all different facets of the paranormal field.
All true stories, all true accounts. It's not
Yep.
fiction.
Yep, there's no fiction
Real
in there.
deal.
And that's what I love about it is, some of them will blow you away. Some of them will make you go, what in the world? Oh my goodness. Is this person, are they okay? It kind of shakes you up a little bit. The issues do. So you never know what's going to happen with them, and you never know what you're going to see reported. So it's amazing. Everything's up there though. They can get all this stuff. It's all ready to go. Right, Phyllis?
Yep. And we scoop the news so many times. It's just, I chuckle because the mainstream media denies these things exist, and then all of a sudden we have many, many stories on them years before the mainstream figures it out.
Well, I definitely want to thank you for all the hard work you do, because you are the provider of the true reports, the strange and unknown. Without you,
it's a labor of love.
It is, and these people don't have a medium without you. So you are an amazing individual. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Phyllis. Of course, we're going to have you back for more updates here soon, too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. Phyllis Galde, everybody. Wow. Editor-in-Chief, Fate Magazine. Be sure to look at the new website, fatemag.com. Let us know what you think. There's plenty of places to contact us on there. Let us know what you think of the website. It's amazing. Very easy to navigate. Cool articles on there you guys can read and check out. And hold tight, because when we come back, we're going to be having none other than Marcus Allen. Now, he's the publisher of Nexus magazine in the UK, and Scott Henderson, Apollo mission specialist. The Great Moon Landing Debate. Did we land there in the late 1960s? Join us in chat because Scott Henderson is posting pictures as we speak that says otherwise. So log in to chat, WGOG Digital Broadcasting. That's WGOGDB.com. Facebook, Twitter as a guest. Fate Magazine Radio will be back in just a few moments. Stay tuned.
We pause for station identification. It's the little cinder block building on the north side of town with the towel behind it. WGOG DB Clearwater. Let's talk.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has delivered a one-of-a-kind reading experience, covering everything from psychics, UFOs, paranormal investigations, and more. To subscribe, visit fatemag.com or call 828-702-3032. That's 828-702-3032. Subscribe and find your true reports of the strange and unknown at fatemag.com.
Nothing feels better than a good cleanse to wash away the day. If you think that refreshes you, then experience the ultimate cleanse with Soaps by Susan. Cleansing Spiritually LLC uses only pharmaceutical-grade essential oils, all-natural shea butter, coconut oils, and vitamin E, and tailored toward the ultimate cleanse. Susan uses a skin-safe fragrance with an aroma that brings a smile to your face and takes you to that happy place within. Each bar is handcrafted and custom to order, so it not only cleanses the soul, but also matches your room's decor. Cleansing Spiritually soap makes great gifts, or you can just indulge yourself for a spiritual cleansing you'll never forget. You want some now, don't you? We thought so. Contact Susan Todd to place your custom order at facebook.com/spiritually. Don't settle for clean. Get spiritually clean at facebook.com/spiritually. I Am Psychic, Not Telepathic by Ariel Grace. This book will guide you through learning about yours and your children's psychic gifts. It will assist you with accepting and give you homework to do for yourself and your family. Ariel Grace gives handy tips and tricks to assist you with connecting to your spirit guides and angels, assisting your psychic kids, and keeping your house clear of unwanted energies and more. Ariel Grace helps you overcome your fears of the unknown and the unseen by giving you tools to use while developing your intuitive abilities. Let's flex those intuitive muscles and feel good about our extraordinary gifts. I Am Psychic, Not Telepathic is available on Amazon as a download or in print. Purchase a copy today and not only help yourself, but your family as well.
24 minutes past the hour. Fate Magazine Radio. Todd Bates here. Of course, we're having some a little bit of tech issues over there in the UK. Marcus Allen's going to be joining us here momentarily. He's fixing some things on his end. Of course, right now we're joined by Scott Henderson. Now, Scott is an amazing individual, and what I recommend is you guys get into chat so you can see some of these photos that he is posting, because we're going to be discussing the lunar landing, okay? And was it actually legitimate or not? That is the beauty of this, is we don't know, and we're about to find out. Now, with it, you have the Apollo missions, several different Apollo missions. There's also some discrepancies in the suits that they're going to be discussing. There's some discrepancies in the lander itself. Were they really on the surface? All of these different discrepancies can be seen with your own eyes in chat, WGOG Digital Broadcasting. Log in through Facebook, Twitter, as a guest. Either way, go ahead and log in through there. And first, of course, we got Marcus back here. I want to go ahead and welcome him to the show. And now, Marcus, of course, publisher of Nexus magazine over there in the UK. Amazing magazine over there. Marcus, welcome.
Thank you, Todd. Very good to be back with you.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a while. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
It's not something that we do very much in the UK, to be honest. We have Black Friday, where everybody gets overexcited about shopping because they're going to get discounts, but that's about the only thing we do.
See? You don't celebrate that, and I talked to somebody in Australia, they don't either, which is, for obvious reasons why, but you'd think you guys would do something like that by now. But the Black Friday thing, you don't go out, do you?
No, there's so many other people out there already. I thought, well, we'll let them get on with it.
Way too many other ones. And, of course, we've got Scott Henderson joining us as well. Scott, welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely.
Hope you can hear me now.
Yes, sir. Everything is fine. We are good to go. And the lunar landing, what we're going to do, guys, is, this is a big debate. This is a big controversy. It's been talked about for decades. And we're going to go from start to finish here. What I'd like to do is kind of start here on Earth, go into the launch, outer space, then the moon, and then back. So by doing this, we want to take the listeners on the same trip that the astronauts took. And what we're going to try and do is gather all the evidence, form a conclusion, and of course get comments here from the listeners. That's what's important. It's Fate Magazine's all about true reports of the strange and unknown, and these are definitely true reports. You guys have done your homework on this launch, on these missions, on this entire event. So I definitely commend you for that. And Marcus, I want to start with you first.
Okay.
Now, you have the Apollo missions. Here it is, the great space race. We have to get there before Russia. There's no way we can slow down. We have to get there before they do, or they rule the world. I mean, it's just crazy back then. So kind of take us back in time a little bit. Let us know how these missions were formed, why, and why were we going to the moon to begin with?
Well, it's all because of John Kennedy, the late President John Kennedy. Let's go back now to April the 12th, 1961. That was the date that Yuri Gagarin was launched into orbit around Earth. The first human, we're told, that had ever been launched into orbit.
Okay.
6 weeks later, May the 25th, 1961, John Kennedy stood up in the joint houses of Congress and made the announcement, the very famous announcement, we're going to land a man on the moon before the decade is out and return him safely to the Earth. Probably one of the most famous speeches of the 20th century. And it was in a direct response to Yuri Gagarin's flight, because that demonstrated to the world that the Soviet Union, as they were known then, the Soviet Union were ahead of America in this space race, the first one into space. And America don't have the option of coming second to anybody. Hence, John Kennedy's famous announcement. Now, at that time, no American had been into orbit, obviously, because Yuri Gagarin was the first. So what they did was to fire a rocket. It was actually an intercontinental ballistic missile with a small capsule on top with Alan Shepard in the capsule, 100 miles up, and then 100 miles back down again. It wasn't orbit, it was just into space. Ironically, Neil Armstrong had already been into space, because that is defined as 50 kilometers above the Earth's surface, and in the X-15 rocket, he'd already been that high. Mm-hmm. Anyway, America now has to get to the moon by the end of the decade. May 1961 to December 1969. There's just over 8 years to do it. So they got stuck in. They started working out what was required to get a man into the moon, or onto the moon. So they start with the Mercury Capsule, which is one man in space, launching them. That was done successfully. John Glenn was a very famous astronaut who orbited the Earth. There were several others in the Mercury program. That was followed by the Gemini program, which was 2 men in space at the same time, and they had to practice the docking in space, so that if they're going to go to the moon, they're going to have to work out how to get to the moon. So they practiced these launches. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins are obviously going to be the Apollo 11 astronauts. They were on the Gemini program. So this was all going on. At the height of the Apollo program, 400,000 people were working flat out, designing, building, and testing the equipment that everybody thought was going to be necessary to get to the moon. This is fine. There's no conspiracy about any of this. This is all on record. These are all people who were working, doing the best job they could.
Standard operating procedure.
Sorry. Yes. They were using slide rules initially to design the spacecraft, because the computers weren't really up to it. And if you want to see what a slide rule looks like, if this sounds a bit historic, it is a bit historic. You've got to go to a museum to have a look for one.
Those are a little, I've seen them.
You've seen them. They're actually very good pieces of kit, and they do the job they do, but they're not computers. They came along a bit later. So having decided that they're going to go to the moon, they have to work out what the thing looks like. So they launch various unmanned satellites, the Ranger, the Surveyor, and the Orbiter program, to photograph the lunar surface to find out the best place to land. And there was a big scare at the beginning. Was the lunar surface strong enough to support an object landing on it, or would it sink into a great dust bowl? Would it disappear? And it was found fairly rapidly that, yes, you could land on the lunar surface quite comfortably. There was no major problem about that. So they designed the craft that is going to go to the moon. Now, Werner von Braun is the head of the American space program in Huntsville in Alabama. He was the Redstone rocket, which was a military rocket, the development of the V-2 rocket, which he had designed in Nazi Germany. Operation Paperclip, some people may be familiar with that, but we haven't got time to go into that right now. So Werner von Braun is getting a team of people around him designing the Saturn V rocket, which is a 365 rocket, which is going to launch man to the moon. And there are various tests being done. There's the famous test on Apollo 1, which ended in pretty good disaster, where 3 astronauts, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, were incinerated because they put oxygen in the capsule under pressure. Well, any schoolboy will tell you that if you do that, it's extremely dangerous and likely to explode, which is what it did.
Which is what happened.
It was a setback to the Apollo program. And this happened in January 1960. So there are major problems going on. Various tests are done. Now, one of the principles of any scientific development is that you test your equipment. And if you're going to have men or humans on board, you have to test the equipment without humans on board first to make sure it works. Otherwise, you're going to put the lives of people on board in jeopardy. Apollo 6 was an unmanned launch of the full Apollo of the full Saturn V rocket. It's 3 stages. Most of it is fuel. It weighs about 3,000 tons. And in order to get the amount of fuel through into the engines, it requires very powerful fuel pumps. What was discovered on Apollo 6, which is an unmanned launch, was that the rocket very nearly shook itself apart. It's called the Pogo Effect, which is acoustic vibration. The flow of the fuel was probably being interrupted at certain points due to the design of the compressors and the fuel pumps. And it was basically, Pogo Effect describes it quite well. It was bouncing up and down. And the reports after the Apollo 6 launch was that if it had had humans on board, they would have been unable to do any operation on the craft. Anyway, Apollo 7 followed. This was a manned launch into Earth orbit, which was not the full Saturn V rocket. And it was just to demonstrate the ability to get the whole piece of equipment, which is the lunar lander, the command and service module, into orbit. That came down again all right. Now, Earth orbit is not particularly far away. It's about 150 miles above the Earth's surface. So Apollo 7 was successful. So what did they do next? They went to the moon on a rocket that on its previous launch had been unsuccessfully, well, when I say unsuccessful, it had exhibited a great many faults and problems. Mm-hmm. So they were going to launch 3 humans to the moon. This is Apollo 8, which they did in December 1968.
Okay.
And you may remember the broadcast, the astronauts on Apollo 8 were reading the book of Genesis, which is fair enough. And America can do what it feels appropriate. But the point about Apollo 8 is that the rocket had not been successfully tested without humans on board. The heat shield of the returning command module had not been tested at lunar orbit return velocity, which is basically the same speed you leave Earth at, 25,000 miles an hour. And yet they managed to orbit the moon and return safely and land. This is extremely dangerous to do something that had been previously untested, and the heat shield on the Apollo craft had not been tested under operational conditions at this point.
And so just to stop you for a quick second, that's something that a lot of our listeners, I'm sure, have never heard of. NASA, they're perfect, okay? Let's face it. They make no mistakes, quote unquote. But they test everything. So this is an untested mission, basically. This is, okay, we're running low on time here, guys, get in.
Yeah, it was an untested mission, but it demonstrated, apparently, that the Saturn V rocket could do what it had been designed to do, i.e. fly to the moon, take 46 tons into lunar orbit, and return safely to the Earth. But there had been no testing done prior to its mission, which is extremely dangerous. Then you move on from December 1968 into Apollo 10, which also went to the moon, but it didn't land. It was to test the lunar lander in lunar orbit, i.e. orbiting the moon. This was apparently successful in early 1969, which led on to the famous Apollo 11 landing on the moon in July 1969. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin landed, walked on the lunar surface. Mike Collins operated the command module in lunar orbit. They walked around, they were on the surface for 22 hours. Now, here's a question. What's the temperature on the lunar surface
Cold.
When the sun is shining?
Well, probably hot.
It's hot.
There's no protection.
It's hotter than the boiling point of water, i.e. 100 degrees centigrade, 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So they've got to keep cool because they're in bright sunlight. There are no clouds on the moon. There's no atmosphere on the moon. The sun is shining. And if you've ever tried getting into your car after it's been sat in the sun for a few hours, it's going to get a bit warm inside. So they must have had air conditioning. No, they didn't have air conditioning because you can't have air conditioning in a vacuum. A vacuum is the best insulator that we have. That's why you have thermos flasks. So if you've got a vacuum, how do you get rid of the heat that is generated inside the spacecraft, which has an atmosphere? Because they weren't wearing their spacesuits, except when they were on the lunar surface. And the answer is the heat was radiated away. Now, if you do the calculation, it's called black body radiation.
Okay.
You do the calculation, you can work out what the internal temperature of that spacecraft will be sat on the lunar surface. And the answer is 246 degrees Fahrenheit or 120 degrees centigrade, i.e. it would cook you. So what on earth were they doing? How did they survive? how did they manage to then return safely to the Earth?
And now we get to one of the first discrepancies. Getting there. Getting there was possible, yet untested. And now that they're there, okay, let's face it. The moon, number one, it's cold at night. When the sun is out, there's no protection. There's no magnetic field. There's nothing to hold these solar rays and particles from hitting anything. That's why there's so many massive craters on there. With this being said, you would fry just going there. I mean, according to math, science, it's pretty obvious. So I guess my question, I mean, of course, we're going to skip off to a break here in a second, but my question would be, they're on there, and why would they risk their lives? I know it's a risk going into space, but wouldn't NASA, especially NASA, have figured all of this out prior to even sending them, knowing that they could not survive the trip, let alone the landing on the moon?
Yes, that you would have thought. But in fact, I haven't even mentioned the biggest problem that they had to overcome to get to the moon.
Okay.
Which is the radiation in space, and specifically in the Van Allen radiation belts, which surround Earth. They're held in place by the Earth's magnetic field, and they protect the Earth from the radiation of space, the solar flares that we get, the solar particle events, which is powerful enough to knock out electric grid lines.
Oh, yeah, you bet it is.
When they're really powerful. And also the galactic cosmic rays, which emanate from deep space and penetrate virtually everything, including humans. Now, humans are not particularly well designed to survive radiation. That's why if you go out in the sun for too long, you're going to get sunburnt. And if you stay out for too much longer, you're going to get sunburnt and die because you'll get skin cancer. That's what radiation does. It causes humans to suffer. It actually affects the DNA in our cells. Obviously, too much sunburn isn't a problem because you know if it's going to happen. The point is you can't tell if you're getting X-rays or gamma rays. And in space, these are particularly powerful because there's no protection. So one would assume that there had been protection built into the Apollo command modules on which the astronauts were traveling. And on the lunar surface, you would expect them to have radiation protection in their spacesuits. They didn't. There was no radiation protection in their spacesuits or in the craft in which they were traveling. So how did they survive? Because NASA now will tell us that radiation is a major problem for human travel beyond low Earth orbit.
And according to what you're saying, it's not just the suits that couldn't protect them. The actual capsule itself couldn't protect them either. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. The capsule, because it was made of aluminium, weight is a major problem in going into space. You've got to keep things as light as possible. So the capsule was made, the Apollo command module capsule was made of aluminium. Aluminium is not known for its radiation protection properties. It's light, certainly. And if you get protons, which are particles traveling from the sun, other radiation, if they hit aluminium, they actually create more radiation inside the craft than they do outside. It's one of the properties that particular proton events have. So you've got all these questions which haven't yet been addressed. And NASA, when asked, how did you protect your astronauts from the dangers of radiation in space, will not answer the question. They will not address it. Or they will say something like, well, we launched them in such a direction that they missed most of the Van Allen belts. Well, they don't tell us what the trajectory was, because launching from Cape Canaveral, or Cape Kennedy it was called then, launching from Cape Canaveral, you basically will travel 1.5 times around Earth, and then you will launch off to the moon when you're over the Pacific for the second time. That's when the launch, the trans-lunar injection it's called, the TLI. Mm-hmm. When you launch to the moon, you're traveling through the major part of both Van Allen belts. There are 2 of them. Well, actually, there are 3, but let's not get into that right now. There are 2 major belts, the inner and outer. anything within the Van Allen belts will be affected by radiation and severely affected.
And we're going to touch on that more when we come back here, Marcus. This is amazing. This is something you folks need to think about. You definitely need to think about the possibilities. Yes, it's great. We went into space. We landed on the moon. We beat the Russians. Hoorah. Okay? But was it really possible? That's what we're trying to discover tonight with Marcus and Scott here. And when we come back, we're going to be discussing more about the radiation, how it would affect the astronauts from them even getting there to begin with. And then coming up are some actual photographic evidence. You guys are going to want to see this in chat. WGOGDB.com. Just log in through Facebook, Twitter as a guest. Just get in there. Those pictures are posted in there for you to see for your eyes only. More Fate Magazine Radio when we come back. Stay tuned.
Real people and not pre-recorded and regurgitated radio. WGOG DB Clearwater. Let's talk. Fate Magazine, FateMag.com, now accepting advertising. Show the world you mean business by purchasing an advertisement with Fate Magazine and Fate Magazine Radio. With 3 affordable platforms to choose from, advertising with Fate is a no-brainer. Choose to have your ad in the next issue of Fate Magazine, or choose the power of online advertising on FateMag.com. Now you can even advertise on Fate Magazine Radio with a fully produced audio ad. Print, online, or on air. Bundle all 3 to save even more. Fate Magazine has you covered for the targeted audience you're looking for. Don't waste any more time or money. Contact us at fatemag.com to get started. There are thousands of health and beauty products on the market these days, but how many can you say are truly natural? The name says it all, and Naturally by Darla is here to humbly serve, guide, and help to heal all individuals seeking a more natural way of living. NaturallyByDarla.com provides a wide variety of products and services like essential oils, soaps, balms and salves, powerful mists, and ancient healing techniques. Curious yet? We thought so, and invite you to visit our website, naturallybydarla.com, or call 847-334-1580. That's 847-334-1580. Naturallybydarla.com. Humbly serving for over 10 years. Naturally. Find your peace of mind and clarity every Sunday night on a Gang of Girls radio show. Host Ariel Grace provides tips, cleansing techniques, and interviews by renowned guests from around the world. Tune in live Sunday nights, 8, 7 Central at agangofgirls.com. Don't you think you deserve some peace of mind in your life? Then find it at agangofgirls.com.
48 minutes past the hour, Fate Magazine Radio Live. I'm your host, Todd Bates. We've got Scott Henderson and Marcus Allen joining us tonight. Those of you just picking up the show, don't worry, we've got you covered. Everything's being recorded, and you can subscribe to us free of charge on iTunes. You can just search Fate Magazine Radio. You'll find us right there in iTunes, Google Play Music, and we'll be coming up on iHeart here pretty soon as well. We're getting Fate Magazine Radio a good kick in the pants here, getting things back in business here, going back and forth with a lot of these different directories and things. But it's easier for you to listen. You can listen to us at WGOGDB.com, along with over 250 other directories, even through the TuneIn app. If you guys have the TuneIn mobile app, you can listen live right through there. And we welcome and definitely invite you into our live chat room, WGOGDB.com. Just click on the chat button right there. You can log in and see some of the pictures that we're going to be discussing here just a little while with Scott Henderson of the actual moon surface and the discrepancies in those photos. We're going to cover each and every detail for you. I know, and Marcus and Scott and I have been talking, this could be shocking to you. Completely understood. That's why we're here, to get the information, build a foundation, and let you be the judge. That's what it's all about. So welcome back to the show, guys. And we were talking about the radiation, the astronauts getting out into the elements, literally. There's no protection from the sun, so the radiation would surely go through the capsule. It would go through the suit, and it would eat them alive on their way to the moon. They would be kind of pretty much sick or worse by the time they got there. So go ahead and continue with that, Marcus, because it's really interesting, because that's kind of where the buck stops. I mean, that's not something you can beat. You can't just beat that off or wave it away with a stick or take a pill, okay? So go ahead, proceed.
Yeah, no, that's true. Protection against radiation it's fairly straightforward, to be honest. If you have your teeth x-ray, you go in for a dental x-ray, the person operating the equipment will be wearing a lead apron, about a couple of centimeters, 1 inch thick, to protect them, because lead is particularly good at protecting against radiation. It prevents the passage of radiation through it. And it's possible, for those of us of more mature years, you may remember when you first went through airport security and they had x-ray machines. Mm-hmm. Those machines, you were always advised that if you had your camera equipment, and these are in the days when photographic film was being used. Remember photographic film?
I do, and it would erase it completely.
Yes, a strip of celluloid which has got light-sensitive material on it. Anyway, you were always advised not to put your film through the X-ray machine, because the X-rays would damage the film. They would cause it to be fogged, which is to reduce the contrast of the film, i.e. it would not be very good. So X-rays, we know, affect photographic film, and we'll come on to why this is important maybe a bit later. But looking at the radiation in space, there was a Russian unmanned craft. It was called the Zond 5 satellite that was sent by the Soviet Union in mid-1968 to the moon, to orbit the moon, and it was carrying some biological specimens. And one or two of the specimens were small turtles or tortoises. And these were launched, poor things, they weren't being told what they were going to be doing, but they were launched up into space, orbited the moon, came back, landed on Earth, and they were alive. And everybody thought, well, whoopee, tortoises can survive in space. Yes, they can. Until you then look at a little bit of a detail, which is what is the lethal dose of radiation for man, and what is the lethal dose of radiation for tortoises? And it's 30 times higher for tortoises than it is for man. So just launching a couple of tortoises around the moon doesn't prove anything.
Okay, I'm going to throw a question at you here real quick. To this whole radiation thing, I'm getting some chatter on Twitter here. Having one of the first things I launched into space was a monkey. Now the monkey came back and it survived. How's that possible? Because
it was only in low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit is where the International Space Station flies, where the space shuttle went to regularly, where most people will be familiar with launching into low Earth orbit. Now, low Earth orbit, as I said, is about 150, 200 miles above the Earth's surface. The Van Allen radiation belts start at about 600-700 miles above the Earth's surface, so that it's everything in the space station and in the space shuttle and launched into low Earth orbit is relatively safe because it is not being affected by radiation. Yes, they launched a monkey into space. Poor little monkey. He was a bit upset when he got back.
He looked a little cranky. I gotta admit that.
And there was Laika the dog that the Soviet Union launched, and unfortunately, Laika the dog died in space because they didn't put a heat shield on it. So he died of heat stroke because though space itself is cold, it has no temperature because there's nothing in space to have a temperature until you put a spacecraft or something, or like the Earth or the Moon in space, that will acquire a temperature, which is generated by the radiant energy of the sun. Until you have something in space to have a temperature, it's freezing cold, a lot colder than Antarctica or Siberia. Mm-hmm. You put a spacecraft into up into space, into orbit, in low Earth orbit, which will spend half its time in the Earth's shadow. the International Space Station orbits the Earth about once every hour and a half. And if you know where to look, you can see it going overhead. It's a relatively slow-moving point of light. If you've got a good set of binoculars, you can actually see it as a space station with the solar panels extended. The point is that spends half its time in the Earth's shadow, so it's not getting heated. So it's getting hot when it's in the sun, cold when it's in the shadow. If you're going to the moon, you're in sunlight the whole time, and you have to keep cool. You're also being exposed to radiation. So my contention is that because all the astronauts that we know were launched, the named astronauts, most people can name an Apollo astronaut, Neil Armstrong obviously being the most famous, Buzz Aldrin, Ed Mitchell, Alan Bean, Dave Scott, John Young, Gene Cernan, who recently passed away. Most people could name an Apollo astronaut because they were very famous people. They were national heroes. And this was the whole part of the program. Now, how many people could name a shuttle astronaut or an astronaut who's flown to the International Space Station in the last 6 months,
That's
for
correct.
instance?
No one.
No, because they're not as familiar to the public. So what we're looking at here with Apollo is a public relations exercise. At some point, it would have been obvious to those in charge, not very many, but it would have been obvious to a few, that this was an extremely dangerous operation. We've got the radiation in space, you've got rockets which tend to explode if you don't get them right, and you've got to get astronauts back from lunar orbit, if you're sending them there, which I don't think they did. So you've got to have a heat shield that works, and the whole thing is going to be live on television. So dead astronauts live on television,
pretty risky,
national heroes, are not something that NASA wants to contemplate. So Plan B is put into operation, the backup.
And that is something we're going to get into in great detail here after the news. With this, the what I've heard so far is amazing and eerie at the same time. So basically what's going on is we were never on the moon. We never went that deep into space, which is very uncomforting for us Americans, okay? And now you guys, you're in the UK, Scott, you're in Canada, so you're a neutral party here. And so from what I've heard so far, basically the way I'm going to conclude this is this was some type of propaganda put on by NASA, the country itself, to show some force to because of this big Cold War. This was something that had to be done. Now, maybe we didn't have the funds to do it or the knowledge, but it's something that of course, America feels had to be done in order to save us from nuclear destruction. So to go to that extreme, to risk all these lives, and from what you're saying, from what I've heard, the radiation, they would be dead before they got there, and definitely would not have survived the trip back, mathematically or scientifically here. So that is what is disturbing. That is what is disturbing and amazing at the same time. So this is why we want your opinion.
Well, there are 2 points.
Go ahead, Scott.
There are 2 other points that haven't been brought up, and that is in 2012, the Van Allen probes were put up there to examine and map the Van Allen belts in more detail, and they came across 2 more features within the Van Allen belts. One is called the glass wall at 7,000 miles out, which is a very intense belt of radiation and very high temperatures, as well as 10,000 kilometers of plasma field beyond that. Okay, and cold plasma is running at 1,000 degrees Kelvin.
Pretty warm.
So it's an interesting concept how you can put any vehicle through, or satellite or anything else through that field.
That to put someone through that's suicide.
That's what they mapped.
And that's what's blowing me away, is why, not only would NASA put these guys in harm's way like that, And you'd think they'd be able to realize that sooner or later, the people on a global scale are going to put 2 and 2 together and figure all this out like you two have. And we're going to hear more of this when we come back. You guys stay tuned. This is some information. When we come back, we're going to talk about some photographic evidence, and Scott's going to get his turn in all this. It's going to be an amazing conversation here. The moon landing debate. It's out there. Let us know your comments. WGOGDB.com. Join us in chat. There's photos posted in there that Scott has posted in there. Actual evidence discrepancies that are in there. Be sure to check those out. Fate Magazine Radio Live. We're going to return here in just a few moments. Here's your latest news.
Stuck on the internet because our owners won't buy us a real radio station. WGOG DB Clearwater. Let's talk.
Al Franken vows to do better, but not stepping down. I'm Debbie Hanley, Fox News. Senator Al Franken has spoken out for the first time on the sex abuse accusations.
Democratic Senator Al Franken says he'll be back to work on Monday, that this has been embarrassing and a, quote, shock to him that women have accused him of groping them. 4 of them have come forward so far. Here's what he said on Minnesota Public Radio about the allegations.
I'm someone who hugs people. And I've learned from these stories that in some of these encounters I've crossed a line.
Franken says he will go along with an ethics investigation, but he's not stepping down as a senator. In Washington, Molly Henneberg, Fox News.
Top Republicans continue to call for Alabama's Senate candidate Roy Moore to give up because of accusations of improper sexual advances decades ago. Senator Tim Scott, appearing on ABC's This Week, says Moore has lost the people's trust.
It is pretty clear to me that the best thing that Roy Moore could do for the country is to move on. The reality of it is that the allegations are still very strong and credible, and the denial has been weak.
Today, Congressman John Conyers gave up his post on the House Judiciary Committee.
Conyers, the Michigan Democrat and longest-serving House member, still denies the allegations, but says he's stepping away to keep the claims from clouding the Democratic agenda. House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi on NBC's Meet the Press said she believed Conyers would do the right thing.
In terms of what he knows about his situation, that he's entitled to due process, but women are entitled to due process as well.
A House Ethics Committee probe is ongoing into the allegations by female staffers of Conyers. Pelosi has called the claims a distraction.
Fox News, fair and balanced.
Information.
Reports of a shooting leading police to evacuate a mall in New York this afternoon. It appears the gun, though, went off accidentally. State police say 2 people have been injured at the Galleria at Crystal Run in Middletown. America's Presidential Wives, a new book, is putting them front and center.
We've studied their husbands, either in history books or on the front page. But what about the First Ladies? Andrew Oak is the author of the book Unusual for Their Time, On the Road with America's First Ladies, which tells the stories of the wives of U.S. presidents, from Martha Washington to Melania Trump. He says she seems to be scoring well with public opinion.
She's a fantastic role model on the international stage. She speaks multiple languages, and these presidential families do have often a lot to contribute, and I think that's the case with the Trumps as well.
Melania Trump is expected to help light the national Christmas tree in Washington later this week. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
A new anti-smoking ad campaign begins, but this one is being run by Big Tobacco.
The stark black and white ads are nothing but a voice over text.
A federal court has ordered Philip Morris USA, Laura Lard, R.J. Reynolds Tobacco, and Altria to make this statement about the addictiveness of smoking and nicotine.
Over 10 years ago, a judge ordered Big Tobacco make statements to fix the damage done over several prior decades. After the Justice Department had sued in 1999, tobacco was found to have violated racketeering laws.
Many smokers switch to low tar and light cigarettes rather than quitting because they think low tar and light cigarettes are less harmful. They are not.
Earlier this year, the FDA announced they're working to lessen the amount of nicotine in cigarettes moving forward. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
At the box office, Pixar's Coco sang its way to the fourth best Thanksgiving weekend ever, with an estimated $71.2 million over the 5-day weekend. I'm Debbie Hanley, Fox News Radio.
WGOG DB Clearwater. Let's talk. Fate Magazine, fatemag.com, now accepting advertising. Show the world you mean business by purchasing an advertisement with Fate Magazine and Fate Magazine Radio. With 3 affordable platforms to choose from, advertising with Fate is a no-brainer. Choose to have your ad in the next issue of Fate Magazine, or choose the power of online advertising on fatemag.com. Now you can even advertise on Fate Magazine Radio with a fully produced audio ad. Print, online, or on air. Bundle all 3 to save even more. Fate Magazine has you covered for the targeted audience you're looking for. Don't waste any more time or money. Contact us at fatemag.com to get started.
Top of the hour, Fate Magazine Radio Live. I'm your host, Todd Bates here. My goodness, the first hour, it flew by. This information is phenomenal, and that's why we want you to get into the chat room. There's some pictures posted in there that you're going to need to see, and you can do so at WGOGDB.com. Just logging through Facebook, Twitter as a guest. Amazing. Amazing. And I want to let you know that next week we're going to be talking Lee Harvey Oswald innocence with Judith Baker. Good stuff. We've got it for the full 2 hours. The JFK assassination. That's next week. Fate Magazine Radio. Of course, right now we're talking with Marcus Allen and Scott Henderson, the moon landing hoax. And we discussed a lot of information in the first hour. Those of you just joining us, I understand you're getting the kids to bed, doing things out there. We've got you covered. Everything's being archived. You can listen to that at iTunes. Just search Fate Magazine Radio on iTunes, Google Play Music. Or all of the archives of all WGOG's past shows will be right there at WGOGDB.com. Just click on archives. It's that simple, and find your favorite show and never miss another one. Welcome back to the show, guys. And we were talking radiation and things in the first hour. And Scott, you jumped in at the perfect timing where you were discussing recent discoveries here and not being able to get a hold of them or talk with them. But first, during the break, there was a really, really important quote that Marcus said. And Marcus, I want you to go ahead with that first. Start us off this hour with that.
Okay, let's start off, because people listening to this may well start to feel a bit uncomfortable about what is being said, because this is challenging a basic belief system that many Americans hold. What I said was, it's a quote that is attributed to Mark Twain. And the quote is very simple. It is easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. Now, that is actually a paraphrase. It is easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. The actual quote from his autobiography is, "The glory which is built upon a lie soon becomes a most unpleasant encumbrance," which is more or less the same thing, but in rather more convoluted language. If you believe a lie, you believe it. And it's very hard to persuade people that that lie is incorrect, because it challenges their belief that they can understand something. Because in the case of Apollo, they've seen it live on television. Therefore, it must be true.
Mm-hmm.
And here are 2 people here, one from the UK, one from Canada, saying, excuse me, guys, don't think that's quite right. There are so many anomalies, inconsistencies, and unexplained details about the Apollo program that it is reasonable to assume that NASA, rather than standing for National Aeronautics and Space Administration, could well stand for, as the New York Times described it, never a straight answer. Which is a bit sad.
It is. It's awful. Go ahead, Scott.
Lots of rocket scientists. So what we've got is doubts. Now, there are three things I believe in: Father Christmas, the Tooth Fairy, and the Easter Bunny. For everything else, I want evidence. And as Scott has spent many months, many years looking at thousands of photographs, the evidence in those photographs is doubtful that they were actually taken on the lunar surface. My contention is that the photographs that you can see on the site is that they were taken under the controlled studio conditions of the training and simulation exercises. It's not very difficult to do. It's what you would expect to happen, and it's not even a conspiracy.
No.
Because you would fully expect during a training exercise it would be photographed, it would be filmed. You would then be able to debrief afterwards. So you would say to your astronauts who were climbing down from their simulation lunar module, which exists, you can go and see them in museums today, climbing down from the lunar module, saying, "Hey, look, Buzz, don't put your foot on that rung, you'll fall off." That's what debriefing after a training exercise is about. Nothing secret about it.
No.
Plenty of people were aware of it. And if you live near Flagstaff in Arizona, you can actually go to Cinder Lake now and see where the U.S. Geological Survey created a facsimile, life-size, of the Sea of Tranquility where Apollo 11 was due to land. They blew a few craters in the ground because it's a crater. They were very similar to those which would be encountered on the lunar surface. Normal things to happen. This is what you'd expect. Models of the lunar surface were built. A full-scale model, 20 foot in diameter, was created using plaster of Paris. Very lifelike, with camera tracks to film approaching it. So an astronaut in a simulator could assume that what he was seeing would be what he would see approaching the lunar surface. So you've got all this going on. There's nothing secret about any of this. You can see the photographs of them. They're all available. And yet we're told that man has landed on the moon. And we've already discovered the problems with radiation, which are really quite severe. We've discovered the problems with the rocket itself, the Saturn V rocket. How come that was never used to launch the space shuttle? Certainly powerful enough, we're told, but no, it didn't. And we haven't even come on to the Russians yet, what they were doing and what they were talking about, because they were trying to get to the moon just the same as the Americans were. There's no dispute about any of that. This is public knowledge. Of course the Russians were trying to. So why didn't the Russians go to the moon? Well, there are two reasons. One is that they said publicly, we will not be sending any cosmonauts to the moon until we can ensure their safe return due to the dangers of radiation. So the Soviet Union, as it was then, knew about the dangers of radiation. They made it public.
And it's common sense. That's why they didn't go. That's why, of course, we supposedly beat them there, is from what you're saying, because they knew the dangers. They were well aware of them, except over here we had to make this giant media circus, right? It had to be pushed, and all this had to be drilled into people's head. We had to film this live so they thought it was actually happening. This was a huge performance.
It was a major Hollywood production, almost. I'm not saying Hollywood had any part of it, right. But I suspect that certain individuals, powerful individuals within the Hollywood community at the time, would at the very least have advised on it, if not actually created it. And the individual I consider most likely to have been associated with the Apollo landings is Walt Disney. He was very friendly with Wernher von Braun. They had the same political outlook on life. And Walt Disney was a master at creating fantasy.
Now, switching into this, you've got all of this pipe that has been pushed for the lunar landing. We made it. Okay, everything's done. Because it is kind of strange how you never heard of it anymore, or we didn't go to the moon anymore. It just wasn't anything big. It's the moon. I mean, yes, of course, it's a very big deal to get there. So they kind of blew it off. It seemed they got their point across. Things happened. Things didn't happen at the same time. And everything cooled off. No more moon talk. Showing the astronauts on television, that actually got quite boring. People didn't watch it anymore because it already happened. We're okay. We're fine. Now, Scott, what I want from you is some of the, you have some photographic evidence as well, and you've been researching this, just like Marcus said, for years, a long time, these Apollo missions. You know, you're a specialist when it comes to this. It's amazing the knowledge you have at pointing out and finding these discrepancies, these errors, these bloopers from this moon landing.
Yes, well, in the photographs, yes, the ones I've posted, they're quite blatant. The mold, evidence of rain, or actually standing water on the glass when it's supposed to be minus 250 degrees outside. If you look through the training manuals for the astronauts, they spent quite a bit of time with a man by the name of Farouk Elbaz, and he was a geologist as well. He was their time management specialist. And they spent different trips to the Antarctic, to Montana, to Arizona, California, Hawaii, and to Canada, just outside of Medicine Hat. And I would assume that that's where the rock samples came from that NASA claims to be on the moon, from all those locations. Now, the reason why they would go to Canada, to an open pit mine, is they were blasting away 500-ton blocks of rock at the time, and that kind of an impact would create the glass beads that you would have from a meteor impact, that they'd be able to collect those from.
Okay.
So when you go to California, you're liable to collect some petrified wood by mistake and maybe send it to the Netherlands, and present it, that kind of thing, and which they did. And when you look at the training schedule and the timeline and when they did the simulations, the date of the simulation are the same dates that are on the embedded plate on the front of each of the videos, which are now available on YouTube. All of them are up there from the different missions that they had on it, and all the simulations are there, and they're dated and time-stamped on it. Now, of course, NASA would be having some very efficient people that would have to, document this stuff and catalog it. So they did that at the time, and 25 or 30 years later, people are demanding that these files be put back up or made available to the public. Nobody's now working at NASA that knows anything about, well, you shouldn't touch these. These shouldn't be there, right? These are all simulations that were done. And they're putting them up as if they're the real thing, right? And when you start looking at the different ones and going back through the documents, which I've done, through everything, through it, you see that the dates, everything are all matching onto that. I mean, the date that of Apollo 11, they landed on the 20th. The final simulation was done on the 11th of July. It's embedded in the video of them showing them landing on the moon. It's right there. And it even has the name of the photographer and the inspector that actually filmed it. I mean, Neil Armstrong was the photographer, was he not?
He was supposed to be, yes. He was the photographer.
Well, there's a guy by the name of Gainez was the photographer for the videos.
Oh, my goodness.
It's actually embedded into the front of the thing. Anybody can go onto YouTube and see them. Just most of them are named Realigned HD or the Raw Uncut video. And you'll see the plate at the start of each one of the simulated sequences on it, and it has the name of the inspector, the photographer, and the actual date that it was shot at.
Just like a film, like a film set would.
Yes, and most of them are done 2 to 3 weeks ahead of the actual launch. Apollo 8 was done about 3 weeks after. It's the only one that was done after on the thing. But like I said, nobody at NASA, they believe that they went. They see the Apollo files. It has there's probably 200,000 film reels in that were available that they said were lost, which are now all of a sudden come back to life again. And they're being put up there as fast as you can watch them. They're putting more up every day on all of the stuff. All of the documents on their training schedules are available right from the Apollo Journal site, right from NASA. All their cuff check lists are out there for you to see. And basically, it's a storyboard for the astronauts to follow, and the timeline is already set in on the cuff checklist for the astronauts to follow, because when they're on the set, nobody could really talk to them.
Right.
And if you've ever seen anybody trying to get away with something, like if you've ever seen two kids trying to hide something from you or whatever, you will see that they are completely animated. Okay, they're a little bit hyper. They're very pleasant chit-chat when they're trying to get away with stuff. You can see two kids getting quite animated when they're doing that. If you're watching the videos of the astronauts on there, those guys are absolutely, completely animated. They're bouncing around like a couple of boops on the videos.
Right? And definitely.
It's not just because their EVA suits were made by a bra manufacturer. You know, they're out there doing that because the whole time they're doing that, they are shooting with that Hasselblad camera. They're pulling up all kinds of evidence and taking pictures of it. Okay? They're exposing it. Nobody can get out on the set to see what they're doing. Okay? But they're completely animated. You listen to the chit-chat between, they're not on the moon. They'd be quite serious. They're trying to stay alive. You know, if you were there, if you saw a video of people underwater scuba diving, doing a little exploring, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're quite serious about the
very
equipment
serious. They have to focus.
They have to, like if you see two men working underwater, okay, they're quite serious about the equipment they have and what they're doing. They're not joking around the way these guys are.
Yeah, because they were skipping and hopping and singing, all of these things. Okay, I see what you're saying. They weren't taking.
Imagine
Go ahead.
You fall down with your suit on and you rip it on a sharp rock.
You're done.
Right? Both of you are dead. Takes two of them to get off the moon. Right? And they were joking around like that. Unbelievable. It's just like two little kids out there trying to get away with something. Okay. And that's exactly what they were doing. They were taking the Hasselblad camera and they were exposing the entire fraud, and it is so well documented in the photographs, it's unreal.
So do you think the astronauts were trying to send us, the people, a message? You know, basically saying, hey, we're doing this, we're acting like this because we don't want you to think this is real.
They were very disgruntled employees.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've ever had a disgruntled employee.
That I have.
You never want to have one with an A-class personality like these guys were. Like every one of these guys were
alphas.
They were alpha males. I mean, they were test pilots, right? It's not like go out and fly this test plane. It's brand new. It hasn't been flown. It's go out and find out what it won't do.
Find out what it won't do.
The limit. Yeah, find out where the limits are on it. Fly it till the wings fly off. You know, come on, kind of thing. That's what a test pilot does. They got a whole different attitude. If you got a disgruntled one of those, you got a handful. They had 57 of them.
That's why I delayed the break. I wanted to hear the end of that, Scott. Amazing. And when we come back here, folks, some of this is just blowing my mind. It really is. And I will put that out there. And I want you guys to understand that this is something that all of us have cherished for a long time. Landing on the moon, that was a big achievement for this country. And these two are saying it never happened. What do you think about that? Let us know in chat. WGOGDB.com. Log in. Facebook, Twitter. You guys have the Facebook and Twitter, I'm sure. You can log in as a guest if you like. We want to know your opinion. Do you think we landed on the moon, or do you think that this was a hoax from what you've heard so far? Those of you that missed it, don't worry. Everything's being recorded. You can send your opinions then. More Fate Magazine.
If you smell something stinking, chances are it's us. 'Cause we are the WGOG DB Clearwater. Let's talk. I Am Psychic, Not Telepathic by Ariel Grace. This book will guide you through learning about yours and your children's psychic gifts. It will assist you with accepting and give you homework to do for yourself and your family. Ariel Grace gives handy tips and tricks to assist you with connecting to your spirit guides and angels, assisting your psychic kids, and keeping your house clear of unwanted energies and more. Ariel Grace helps you overcome your fears of the unknown and the unseen by giving you tools to use while developing your intuitive abilities. Let's flex those intuitive muscles and feel good about our extraordinary gifts. I Am Psychic, Not Telepathic is available on Amazon as a download or in print. Purchase a copy today and not only help yourself, but your family as well. Nothing feels better than a good cleanse to wash away the day. If you think that refreshes you, then experience the ultimate cleanse with Soaps by Susan. Cleansing Spiritually LLC uses only pharmaceutical-grade essential oils, all-natural shea butter, coconut oils, and vitamin E, and tailored toward the ultimate cleanse. Susan uses a skin-safe fragrance with an aroma that brings a smile to your face and takes you to that happy place within. Each bar is handcrafted and custom to order, so it not only cleanses the soul, but also matches your room's decor. Cleansing Spiritually soap makes great gifts, or you can just indulge yourself for a spiritual cleansing you'll never forget. You want some now, don't you? We thought so. Contact Susan Todd to place your custom order at facebook.com/spiritually. Don't settle for clean. Get spiritually clean at facebook.com/spiritually.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has delivered a one-of-a-kind reading experience, covering everything from psychics, UFOs, paranormal investigations, and more. To subscribe, visit fatemag.com or call 828-702-3032. That's 828-702-3032. Subscribe and find your true reports of the strange and unknown at fatemag.com.
When it absolutely, positively has to be the best. WGOG DB Clearwater. Let's talk.
Bottom of the hour, Fate Magazine Radio. Todd Bates here. My goodness. What an amazing show, an amazing turn of events here. And I know a lot of you are maybe in denial. I don't know. It's hard for me to swallow all of this. I mean, our country is being challenged here, saying we didn't go to the moon by these two. But you know what? They make some great points, and you've got to give them that. And see it for yourself. Those pictures are posted in the chat room. They're not being hidden from anyone. And you can find those, WGOGDB.com. Just log in, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about here. Just amazing evidence. And I want to remind you again, next week we're going to be having a very special guest, Miss Judith Baker. We're going to be talking Lee Harvey Oswald. Apparently, they had a little relationship there. And we're going to be talking some Lee Harvey Oswald, his innocence, with Judith Baker next week on Fate Magazine Radio, 6 Eastern, 5 Central. And I know this time's really hard for a lot of you folks to tune in. It will be switching times soon. We're just trying to plan some things out here. So just bear with us. We're trying some things out here. And you don't know unless you try. But of course, we're talking with Marcus Allen. He's the editor, publisher of Nexus magazine over in the UK. And Scott Henderson, Apollo mission specialist. Extensive research both of them have done on the Apollo missions and the lunar landing. So you guys be the judge. That's why this information is being given to you, so you can be the judge at the end and form your own opinions. But Scott, we were going into all of these different discrepancies with NASA, with the astronauts skipping and jumping on the moon's surface and just acting like they really don't care. And here they are in a very, very, very fragile environment, which, according to Marcus earlier, they should be dead before they got there because of the radiation, let alone what's going on the lunar surface. So go ahead, continue. This is amazing.
Well, if you think about how serious the situation would be in a totally foreign environment, you'd be not only your heart rate would be jumping through the roof, but you'd have a very serious venue about you when you're moving about. Every little movement that you're making, you wouldn't want to step on anything that was sharp and cut through your boot. You wouldn't want to kneel down onto something. You'd be probably have a probe with you to make sure that the ground is solid in front of you so you didn't fall down. I mean, these guys are just running around, falling down, all kinds of stuff, and making jokes about it. It just doesn't seem real. It seems like they've done it a dozen times before in a simulation, and they're on the same set. You know, it's too well rehearsed, as far as I'm concerned, to have any reality to it. And the one point I'd like to make, though, is a few people have mentioned to me that it really doesn't matter. You know, it's not important whether they actually made it there or not. You know, they don't think it's a real important feature that we get to the bottom of this.
It doesn't matter?
That's right.
They're saying it doesn't matter.
I said to one person, I said, well, I guess you've never had any money, eh? And he kind of looked at me, and I said, well, just go on the stock market and invest your money, because NASA's out there on the stock market. And if the technology you're investing in isn't real, I mean, you can still make some money on that, but you better know the difference.
And another fact is,
one big hurry.
There's a lot of different conspiracy theories out there. They're flourishing, a lot of different conspiracy theorists. But like Marcus mentioned earlier, Scott, this isn't a conspiracy. It's blatantly obvious. So, I mean, this is where it's hard to swallow for a lot of people.
Well, to me, it's very obvious. I mean, I can't look at any photograph now. It takes me only a few seconds. You can pull anyone up. I can show you what the astronaut is photographing and why he's photographing.
That's exactly
no random photos.
That's exactly what I want to touch on this segment. And I've been chomping at the bits here and holding it until this segment. This is our long segment here at the second hour. So we have some time to discuss some of these discrepancies with both of you, get some opinions from both of you, of course. But Scott, you've posted some amazing photos in the chat room, WGOGDB.com. Just log in there, folks. You'll see them. And these photos have different, you have a flag that is full of moisture, mold on a surface that obviously it's a vacuum. It can't survive. So explain some of these photos and how they are not on the moon's surface, to be blunt, how they're not even there to begin with.
Well, if you're a good American citizen, you're going to want to see an American flag photographed, right? They're going to have to, when they land on the moon, they're going to have to do it. And if it happened to be raining that morning, they're still going to photograph it anyway. But these astronauts, like I said, they're very disgruntled. They very, very, very carefully held that flag up and photographed it with the right angle so that you can see that it's wet, that it's not just a shadow. Okay? And the one thing that's striking about it is you have physics professors saying that the flag couldn't wave because it was made out of aluminum or tin or whatever like that, right? Mm-hmm. Take a look at that flag. It's an official American flag, and an American flag is like no other flag in the world. I mean, the stars are embroidered on, and the stripes are stitched together. It's not just a silk screen, right? And when you take a close look at that, you'll see that it's a real American flag and that it's soaking wet. The two different colors in the blue show up quite nicely, as well as there's a few actual water spots on it. That particular photograph will pretty much stops anybody that has an argument against me at this point, and it usually gets them quite annoyed.
And yeah, it can be a very annoying topic here. It really could. Because, like a comment was just made in chat, a very important comment, and I'm sure you guys get a lot of it. And, what they're stating in there is for every point made, a counterpoint can be made. They go back and forth, back and forth. That's why it's the great debate. It's been talked about for so long. You have NASA, you have our country, our president. We don't see these people as lying to us, telling us, hey, we went to the moon. Oh, no, we didn't really, but just go ahead and believe that for all these years. We went there, we spent all of your money on all of this high-tech equipment just to film this in a barren desert somewhere. It seems way out there. And trust me, I agree with a lot of the points you guys are making here, because it does make you think. Maybe, for example, and I want to get this before you get into some more photographs, Scott, get your opinion on this. Maybe we did go there. We just didn't go there at that time. Was that possible?
If that was the case, we would be traveling there on a regular basis by now, 50 years later.
Okay, so with all of our technology, all this modern technology we have, we're able to talk to the entire world at once now, instantly, and have all of this computer technology, all of this material that has been invented, yet nothing is strong enough yet to have a man survive in space long enough to get to the moon, correct?
If we can get through that plasma field, maybe we might have a chance after that.
Okay.
That's pretty severe. That glass wall out there they discovered in 2012 is a pretty severe. They call it a glass wall. It's a barrier, and NASA calls it the impenetrable barrier.
Okay.
You can Google that right from NASA. They call it that.
So we can't get through it. And according to Marcus, we'd be dead. The radiation would wipe us out. It would go through the capsule, go through everything. And then, of course, you've got photographic evidence that's in the chat room. People are looking at it. They're going through it. They're really enjoying it here. These are things that are eye-openers. And just like we talked about earlier, everybody may be in denial about this whole thing, especially Americans. And you guys are a neutral party. And I want to go ahead and put that out there for the new listeners. One is in the UK, one is in Canada. They're neutral. Okay? So this is something that definitely needs some attention put to it, because it has been talked about extensively. You have a lot of different reports on it. Yeah, your conspiracy theorists are going to blow a lot of things out of the water. These two, by far, I've definitely interviewed them before on other programs, are two of the most down-to-earth people I've ever met on this topic. And they have nothing to gain from this. They're just providing you information for you to process and make your own decision. That's what this show's about. So some more of the photos, some more of the discrepancies in there, Scott, let's get into that. You've got some rocks, for example, on there. How are these rocks different in the photo than what we have seen?
Well, they're completely manufactured for the set, and most of them are just basically a plaster mold that they put together. I mean, the one, it's called the Genesis rock, actually, and you can see where the astronaut just gave it a kick and knocked the rock apart. I mean, I don't know anybody that can just boot a rock with those boots on.
A little rough,
yeah. And crack it open, and inside there's a Champion spark plug. I mean, it's right there in front of you. You can even see the first part of the letters if you've got a 4K video display.
Oh, boy.
And it's like, I put that one up for an example. Of course, they do have the Genesis rock on display, and they don't have the spark plug with it. It's one of the samples they so-called brought back. Another one was they discovered some very red rock on the moon, which they photographed, and they never brought any samples of it back. Well, it's just crushed brick. You're in a landfill site, and if you look closely at it, you can see the bricks, like the broken pieces of brick, but you can still see the pattern of the brick as they were formed on them when you're looking on the thing. It's just quite as simple as removing those rose-colored glasses when you're looking at the photographs and just looking at what is in the photo, right? Like the Apollo 12 they're setting up the central station for the experimental equipment. The mold that's on the bottom of it is quite apparent, and it's right there for everybody to see. They definitely photographed it for you to see, and there's absolutely no way that NASA would have prepared this equipment in a clean room and have it look like that.
All molded.
It couldn't be. They were protecting the moon from contaminating anything from the Earth. They weren't bringing anything to the moon at the same time as not bringing anything back. The stuff was prepared in a clean room. Absolutely perfect thing. It should be perfectly painted, perfectly white, and perfectly everything. Okay. The other examples of liquids are the Rover itself. The Rover has a oil leak in the rear wheel. The rear axle is leaking, and of course it's coming out, and then the dirt is sticking all over the rim on there, and of course there's no liquids in space. And the other photo I put up of the rover is the Apollo 17 rover, where they took the map and they put a piece in where the fender was missing off the back to stop the dirt from coming up onto them, and the fender actually fell off in Apollo 16 on it, and they're fixing it in Apollo 17. Now I don't forget how many hundreds of miles apart those two places are on the so-called on the moon that they mapped.
Mm-hmm.
But they took a different rover for each mission.
That's a long way.
It's not. It's the same rover through all of them, and I have pictures of the Apollo 15 rover with the same oil leak.
So the rover itself on the moon, because we got a break here in 2 minutes, but with this, we'll probably have to finish it when we come back. But the moon rover, okay, there's a photograph here, and it's an interesting one. One of the wheels is literally in midair, and that can be explained in one of two ways. Maybe it was bouncing, but it doesn't look like whoever's getting on there is even seated to do anything with it.
No, I think he's just kneeling on it to lift it off there. That's not the important part of that photograph. The important part is the tongs that is set on the pile of dirt, and the tongs is very carefully set up there to make sure that the shadow creates an arrow, and at the end of the arrow is a astronaut's glove embedded right into the pile of dirt, and the entire left side of that pile of dirt has gloves sticking out of it everywhere. I think I put 3 shots of it up there of the close-ups of the gloves sticking out all over that pile of dirt.
So these are just throwaway gloves. These are just something probably used in the making of it?
They aren't the same ones that they're using on it. It probably could have been a prototype glove before. It has a gray rubber tip with a black ring around the outside to seal it onto the rest of the glove. And they didn't use that particular kind on there. It could have been an earlier prototype that they were just throwing out. It's probably a whole skid full of them. They just buried them. I mean, they had billions of dollars to spend, right? They could get rid of a pile of gloves in a hurry.
Sure, that's nothing. Sure, yeah, they can just
astronauts.
No, this is good, and we've got to go to a quick break here, folks. Don't worry, when we come back here, we're going to wrap this up and get the final comments from both Scott and Marcus, and then, of course, we want to hear yours. If you have any of those in there, you're posting them. Don't worry, that's what it's all about. Fate Magazine Radio. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
Real people and not pre-recorded and regurgitated radio. WGOG DB Clearwater. Let's talk. I Am Psychic, Not Telepathic by Ariel Grace. This book will guide you through learning about yours and your children's psychic gifts. It will assist you with accepting and give you homework to do for yourself and your family. Ariel Grace gives handy tips and tricks to assist you with connecting to your spirit guides and angels, assisting your psychic kids, and keeping your house clear of unwanted energies and more. Ariel Grace helps you overcome your fears of the unknown and the unseen by giving you tools to use while developing your intuitive abilities. Let's flex those intuitive muscles and feel good about our extraordinary gifts. I Am Psychic, Not Telepathic is available on Amazon as a download or in print. Purchase a copy today and not only help yourself, but your family as well.
My son Casey was a bright, fearless 20-year-old with a boundless future ahead of him. But in the blink of an eye, he was gone. While out riding a skateboard, Casey fell. He was not wearing a helmet. Our whole family wishes he was. It could have saved his life. I'm Captain Kevin Raffelli of the San Mateo Police Department. Parents, encourage your kids to strap on a helmet every time they jump on a bike, scooter, or skateboard. Think of my son Casey and use your head. Put a helmet on. It could save your life.
A message from the Consumer Product Safety Commission.
Fate Magazine, FateMag.com, now accepting advertising. Show the world you mean business by purchasing an advertisement with Fate Magazine and Fate Magazine Radio. With 3 affordable platforms to choose from, advertising with Fate is a no-brainer. Choose to have your ad in the next issue of Fate Magazine, or choose the power of online advertising on FateMag.com. Now you can even advertise on Fate Magazine Radio with a fully produced audio ad. Print, online, or on air. Bundle all 3 to save even more. Fate Magazine has you covered for the targeted audience you're looking for. Don't waste any more time or money. Contact us at fatemag.com to get started. We pause for station identification. It's the little cinder block building on the north side of town with the towel behind it. WGOG DB Clearwater. Let's talk.
"48 minutes past the hour. Fate Magazine Radio. I'm your host, Todd Bates. So if you're just joining us here, whoa, a lot of information has been presented this evening with the great moon hoax debate that's out there. Now, these two, Marcus Allen, Scott Henderson, amazing individuals. A lot of extensive research has gone into what they said. They're just not blowing smoke here, folks. They have got the evidence to back it, and you can see some of that over there in chat, WGOGDB.com. Get your final comments in there, your questions, comments. A lot of you are just blown away, just like I am. It's one of those things that you're going to think about, and of course, we're going to be wrapping things up here and get some final thoughts from them. But be sure, stay tuned. After the show tonight, A Gang of Girls Radio airs live. It's going to be a Thanksgiving special, and they're going to be doing some giveaways, too. You're going to get some free goodies on there. A Gang of Girls Radio with host Ariel Gray. She's going to have guest Lisa Vickerson on. Definitely want to stay tuned for that right after Fate Magazine Radio. Now, guys, there has been a lot of things presented during the program that would knock anyone back. It really would. It would at least make them think. And there's a lot of denial out there, and there's a lot of people that are just dead set on, okay, we went there, that's it, I'm believing it. And, of course, the quote that you guys can hear on the archive that Marcus said earlier by Mark Twain, spot on. So what we have time here. We've got about 5 minutes left in the show. And what I want to do is get a couple-minute final thought from you guys on this whole thing and kind of give you your time to tell the American people or just people in general about it. Marcus, go ahead and go first. You've got a couple minutes here.
Thanks, Todd. First of all, I'd like to apologize to many Americans who are probably feeling quite uncomfortable and are feeling that this Marcus Allen and this Scott Henderson really have no idea what they're talking about. I'd like to apologize to you because it is hard to accept something which you have believed, you've seen live on television, you consider to be part of the national consciousness. What we've got here is one of those paradigm-shifting moments. If you can accept that maybe NASA have not been entirely honest with the American people, or the world even, if you can accept that and just use that as one particular viewpoint and say, look, NASA, your business is in space. If it's a problem getting into space, tell us about it. We'll help you overcome it. We want to travel in space. We want to go to the moon, to Mars, to Venus. We want to travel. That is what humans do. We explore. If you are denying the evidence that we have presented, then you have to come up with a better answer. There are certain things, and to bring this whole space exploration business right up to date, the Orion capsule, which was launched in December 2014 as the first test of Apollo 2.0, is what it looks like. It was tested by being launched by the Space Launch System about 5,000 kilometers out from Earth, and then it returned back. It was unmanned. In order to return to Earth, which it did, its heat shield had to protect it. The trouble is that the heat shield virtually failed. The craft did land, it was recovered, and photographs showing the Orion capsule shows heat shield covering the whole of the craft, not just the bottom, but the whole of the sides as well. If it was required on the Orion capsule returning from at lower speed than the Apollo craft, why didn't the Apollo capsules need heat shield on the whole craft? There are so many anomalies that are now coming forward, and NASA cannot really hide behind Apollo forever. We have to move forward. We need to move forward. And if NASA is such a wonderful organization, how come the only rocket engines they use now to launch anything are made in Russia? They're the RD-180 engines. There's a contract just been signed for the supply of more engines up to 2019. We're hearing that Elon Musk is going to fly 2 tourists around the moon next year. Well, I'll put a large amount of money on the fact that this won't happen because he hasn't got a rocket to launch it. He hasn't got a capsule in which they can travel.
Okay.
And he certainly hasn't got a heat shield that will ensure their safe return.
All right. And I hate to cut you off, Marcus. We only have 60 seconds left here. Scott, give a final thought here.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I would like to see my children and my grandchildren properly educated in what we can and cannot do in space or technology and whatever that we have to offer out there. The best way to give them the incentive is to say, these are the challenges we need to go after. These are the ones that we have to resolve, right? Because they're still trying to resolve them today, yet they've claimed they've already done it. You know, NASA says, well, we lost the technology. I don't see anywhere in history where we've lost the technology. When the Wright brothers learned to fly, they kept on flying. You know, they were flying the very next day again, right? And We just don't seem to be able to do that with anything traveling into space. And all of these new problems keep coming up. So,
will it ever be solved?
We need people.
That's the big mystery. And we're going to have you two back on the show here in the future. We're going to get some comments and see what if there's any updates, things going on like that. We definitely want to have you back on. Thank you both so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to come on here this evening. It was amazing having you on Fate Magazine Radio.
Thanks, Todd.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You are most welcome. And there you go. Marcus Allen, Scott Henderson right there. Wow. If you guys missed the show, don't worry. Everything's being archived. You can find that real easy. Just go to iTunes, search Fate Magazine Radio, Google Play Radio, or Google Play Music and search Fate Magazine Radio. Or, better yet, we've got all the archives on the website now, WGOGDB.com. Just click on Fate Magazine Radio or any of the other programming there to listen to the past shows. Coming up next, stay tuned. A Gang of Girls Radio with host Ariel Grace. She's going to be having guest Lisa Vickerson on, and they're going to be discussing Thanksgiving, what we have to give thanks for. All kinds of great stuff, and some cool giveaway goodies, too. So definitely want to stay tuned. A Gang of Girls Radio up next. See you next week with guest Judith Baker. We're going to be talking to Lee Harvey Oswald, Fate Magazine Radio. Have a good night, folks.